to Show Up, Stand Out online visibility series for entrepreneurs. My name is Juliette Stapleton. I'm known as the Queen of Visibility, and I'm bringing you amazing entrepreneurs from all over the world. And today it's a very special episode. So we are going to talk about building the life of your dreams and what it actually means. And I want to introduce you to Tom and Ariane Sylvester. And these guys are fantastic. They're the founders of Lifestyle Builders, and I'm going to actually pass the baton over and ask the guys to talk about this. What is this Lifestyle Builders, and how do you guys end up doing what you're doing, and are you actually living the lifestyle of your dreams?
Yeah, so let's actually start with what it is, which is basically the problem that often exists with entrepreneurs is we have this ideal life that we want to live, and when we look at what we're at today, we're not there. So we go and start a business thinking that business is going to get us there. But what we ultimately find is we often end up creating another job for ourselves, where we then have to sacrifice our life to build the business. And after we built multiple businesses and now have kids, and we got to a point where we realized we weren't using the businesses to really leverage our ideal life. And when we looked around at other entrepreneurs, the same thing was happening. A lot of entrepreneurs were building a business, but it was actually taking away from their ideal life rather than supporting it. So what we set out to do was really say, well, let's first make this shift for us. And then once we realized the tactics and the strategies that could help, we started doing that with other entrepreneurs, because we're like, entrepreneurs are helping other people. We want to help them so that they're actually benefiting from all the hard work they put in.
That is so true. And I love this analogy that it's like another job. I had my business for 6 years and I felt like a glglorified employee. And it's not a good feeling. It's really a feeling
and often underpaid.
Yeah. And I was undercharging so badly. And it's an interesting thing. So you are still feeling like you're an employee. And another thing, what you mentioned is, yes, people say to me all the time, oh, I want to start my business, but I don't want to give up my life. Well, and it's kind of like a catch-22, because to build a business, you do have to, at least, especially in the beginning, to do a lot of work, and spend a lot of time. But I think that the vision, and this is where you and your angle comes in with the Lifestyle Builders, the vision of where you're heading and what you're doing is so, so important. Like, what was it for you?
For us, the vision was always to kind of have a fulfilled life with our family together. So when we first met in college, we kind of had that idea of we're going to be on that path that pretty much everyone else is on. We're going to graduate, we're going to get jobs, we're going to buy a house, get married, have kids, kind of the traditional view. And over time, we started to see that, going and getting jobs after college isn't all it's cracked up to be. And, Tom was working in a cubicle in a 9-to-5. And although he was working in the job that he got his degree in, he was not really that happy. And, he started to look at things like, well, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And me, I had a zoology degree, so wasn't a whole lot to do with that. I ended up job hopping and just kind of moving around, and I didn't really have any sort of plan. And we started to look at what our life was going to look like. And I don't think either one of us really wanted what it was at that moment. So, Tom was really the motivation with all of the businesses. He saw that path and was like, I'm going to go over there instead, because I think that can create the life that we want. I was very reluctant at first because I didn't really see that. I didn't have that epiphany to, having businesses could change our lives and make it what we want it to be. So it took us probably 5 years or so to actually get on the same page with that. And that is kind of where the original piece of Lifestyle Builders began. Was neither one of us could follow the path we were on until we got aligned.
Well, I was going to say, and what comes up oftentimes for entrepreneurs is that you end up building a business that solves the problem you have. And so for us, we actually had started 2 other businesses before we started Lifestyle Builders. So we had a real estate investment company. We actually had a retail wine and liquor store. And every time we would start a business, we had this huge disconnect where I wanted to start a business to get us to a certain spot. And Ariana would often be like that no button. Like every time I tried to do something, she'd be like, no. And so we really struggled with this, and it not only impacted the businesses, but it impacted our relationship. And so what we started doing was saying, we're not seeing other couples out there talking about how do you balance life and business and do all this stuff together. So we started coming up with our own ways to do it. And as we had success, so for example, we have this life planner. It's a 2-page document that helps you get aligned with your spouse, that then allows you to say, now that we have alignment and awareness on where we want to go, now let's talk about the steps and the roadmap to get us there. And so we started building all of these tools out really to serve us.
Yep.
And then once they solved our problems and other people started seeing them, they're like, oh, this is really cool. And we're like, oh, other people have these problems too, and we can help them as well.
100%. And I admire you guys because, I tried to work with my husband within my own business. And before I became the queen of visibility and I was just doing digital marketing for people, but it was the same thing, so both people are brilliant, but if they're not aligned, then it creates a lot of tension, and then it's not what you really want, and you're kind of pulling into all different directions. I absolutely love the idea of having a book or a document where you put all your dreams together, all your things together, whatever you want, and then you build the life around that. I actually do that to make my dreams come true. We write down the lists, what we want together, where we want to live and everything. And, things align after you become clear on this. So, and that allows them to work together, which is fantastic. And then you are so right. I think I had a big epiphany last year myself when I said to myself, you know what, I'm getting more and more things. Yes, the money is coming. Yes, everything seems to be okay, but I'm so I'm just so stuck again. I just want to go for coffee with my husband anytime I want. And now this going for a coffee with my husband becomes sort of almost a signature phrase for me. That's why I'm building my business. I want to be free, and I think it's an important angle to have. So I love your the roadmap. You said, so you create a document. That's sort of like a system, isn't it? You create a document and then you have the roadmap of how you can achieve there. I have another question though for you, because this is brilliant. And I think that we have a link here to where people can find out more about these things to the book. But let's talk about how to show up authentically, because it's an important to, so you can find that style together. But you guys, you have a podcast that you do together. Even the way you speak here, it's sort of very nice. You're not interrupting each other, and it's an opposite of my family life, but it's great. It's fantastic. Maybe someday. How did you find that balance? How do you work it between two of you?
I think, to be completely honest, when we first started, we were not authentic at all. We were trying to fit into everyone else's ideal of what you should be when you come into the online world. We were very professional. I remember our first podcast that we had was called Serial Startups, and it was very much, we had notes that we followed. And, it was just, I don't think either of us knew enough about ourselves and enough about what we were the message that we were trying to convey to show up completely authentically.
Well, and part of that too is when you have, for most people, if you're just starting your business yourself, it's just your values, your vision, all of that. When you have two people, especially two people that are in
very
a relationship,
different and very different.
We each come from a different background and have different views. And one of the things we never did early on was align on what those things were. And so from a brand perspective, we were confused for a while, and we actually went through several different brands and things until we honed in on what really worked for both of us. But I think early on, one of the big challenges was we just never had those conversations. Most people don't go deep enough into what is it that we're trying to achieve? Who are we really trying to help? And what problem are we trying to solve? And then what roles do we each play as part of that? So there was a while where Ariane was trying to play this coaching role, and that is my zone of genius. That's what I've done for years. And she was feeling inferior because she's like, well, I can never be as good of a coach as you. And it wasn't until we stepped back and said, well, you do a lot of things much better than I do, such as attention to detail. And so what we really had to figure out was, okay, now that we're aligned on where we want to go and who we want to help, how do we each sit in our zone of geniuses? And then what things are neither of us really that great at that we then want to delegate out? So I think it was that clarity that came after years and lots of hard conversations and challenges that ultimately got us to sit in there so that we can, do our best work.
Well, and I think one of the best things we ever did was when we decided to pivot our old brand, Serial Startups, And we kind of came up with this idea of we want to bring more people together, entrepreneurs with families, people that are trying to build the business to support the life that they want with their loved ones. So we had changed our group name to Family Entrepreneur Life. And we sat down, we were in the car waiting for an appointment, and we sat down and started jotting down all the things that drove us nuts about the online space.
So hold on a second. So Ariane makes this sound much better than it actually was. She was ranting about all the things that she just didn't like, all the stuff that didn't sit well or didn't align with our values. And I was like, wait, hold that thought. And we started jotting all those down.
That's because you're better at coaching.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, just go with it. And I would, poke her. And that ultimately ended up in what's sitting behind us, which is our manifesto. And where you were probably going to go is that this just gave us so much more clarity about what we stand for and what we stand against.
And who we were trying to help ultimately. This was our people, so we figured that out. And after that, so many more things came clear for us. We had this brand that we wanted to build into a movement. We had this manifesto to really connect with people and say, hey, this is for you. We built out our core values. We actually talked about our core values for our business, but we also talked about them for our family. We just started to kind of dig in really, really deep and say, what is it that we are trying to do, and who is it that we are trying to help, and how do we know that we're doing that in the right way? So, the manifesto, the core values, all of that stuff just guides us. Anytime we need to make a decision in our business, we say, what feels like the right thing here? And when you're showing up online, having something like that behind you makes it so much easier to show up as your authentic self. Because even if you have haters or trolls show up, it doesn't matter. You can be like, hey, this is our manifesto. If you don't like that, go find somebody else that you do like, because this is what we stand for, and nothing you can say is ever going to change that.
That is so true, guys. I'm giving you a high five here as well, because that's what I preach. That's exactly what I say. Attract the best, repel the rest. Don't worry about the haters. Don't worry about the trolls. They're just people who you're not aligned with. And it's okay, because there's billions of people in the world. Of course, you're going to be aligned with somebody, and sometimes you don't see it straight away. And then, so you connect, and then you fall apart, which is fine as well. I think that, and what you said is important. When you're showing up online, knowing what you stand for, knowing what you are as a brand, and this is part of the things that I teach as well, my students, get to know yourself and get clear with yourself, not necessarily before you take action, because clarity comes with action, and
yes,
you just confirm that as well, but also just to know what is the right thing for you, because we can, and I mentioned it earlier, but you can get things, I started with online course, private coaching, everything, and then my calendar just went in and blew up, and I didn't like that. I didn't feel that I couldn't relax, and we want to have an amazing life. Tell me this, talking about lifestyle, what is your favorite things to do for your lifestyle, and how's your business built around it so you can enjoy those things?
Well, first things first, anything that we want to do with family goes on the calendar first. So date nights, family dinners, movie nights with the kids. In the summer, we do something really fun we call Friday family field trips. So we take every Friday off from work, and we decide somewhere fun to go or some new experience to have as a family. So that is one way that we have freedom and fun.
I was going to say, and this is huge for me, because for several years I was a business consultant, and I was traveling 4 or 5 days a week to other cities. So like being a father and having 2 young kids growing up, unfortunately, far too often people later in life realize that they missed out on that time. And so like I missed out on little things like getting our kids ready for school in the morning and that type of thing. So now it's living very much more intentional. Like every morning I get to get our kids up and snuggle with them in the morning.
And I get to sleep
in. Yes.
Yes.
And then it builds into really aligning with what we want to do, which was first, let's build this great life for our family. So we literally design our life with our family first, and then we layer the business in. And every year, one of the things we always tell people is to get to your ideal life, you're going to follow that roadmap. But part of what you're going to do is incrementally get there. So for example, Ariane loves to sing. So she started doing choir on like Tuesday nights a couple years ago. I love to play golf, but as we've been building businesses, having kids, there's been less and less of that. So this year I joined a golf league. And so what we're doing is basically we have a vision of where we want to go to. And then what we're doing is intentionally just taking steps in different aspects of our life to live some of that now while continuing to work towards that vision.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And that actually brings me to the next question that I was going to ask you. As a couple living together, working together, everything's together, how do you manage your own time? That was my question, and you kind of started with this, but I find that I'm always together with my husband. We're kind of like you guys, everything together. We don't work together, but we're in the same building all the time. So how do you, and I'm kind of in this room, so I have a lot of me time in a way in this room, but still, what are your ways? How do you manage that? And you have smaller kids.
Yes, we do have smaller kids, but our oldest child, our daughter, is in school, and our son is in full-time daycare. So we do have our days to ourselves, which again was intentional. I did not want to be a stay-at-home mom. So we have our work days, and we figured out over the years that we both have very different working styles. So we had this desk that we built that we're sitting on right here. It kind of goes to both sides. And the plan was to have this mega desk that we could each work at. I don't work down here. I work upstairs in my own space.
All to myself.
He gets the whole desk to himself. We have different music that we listen to. He has to have very, very serious focus when he gets into working. And I'm a little bit more like, the cat's doing something crazy. Let me go see what he's doing, and a little bit more freestyle. So we figured out what our working styles are. We figured out, what kind of space we need to be able to be productive. We figured out that, we each want to have our own alone time because we are together all day, every day. We both work from home in the same house, and we have 2 young kids. So, we are very intentional about okay, what are we going to do this weekend? We're going to have a movie night with just us. And then the other night we have time to ourselves to do our own thing. So we've just kind of fallen into this practice of communication about, hey, I really need some time to myself. I'm going to go and leave the house to do something. And, I really feel like I want to take a daddy-daughter date. I haven't had a lot of time with her. So, it's just a lot about being aware of our own self and making sure that we're asking for what we need, but then also being there to support the other person in the things that they need.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Well, now I'm interrupting you.
And so building on that, what we found is that there's these 3 principles that really help us in life and business. And that is strategy, execution, and optimization. And so these really come from a lot of our business work, but we realize they help a lot in our lives. And so with strategy, what we found was getting clear on where we want to go and how we're going to communicate and get there. So part of what we do is we have quarterly sessions where we plan out our goals and reflect on things. And then we have a weekly meeting where we reflect on the last week, sync back up. Hey, what went well with you this week? What was a challenge? What's something that we can support each other with, so that we're always planning? And then we actually have a quick daily meeting as well. And so what this allows us to do is to set goals, to consistently work towards them. And then the optimization piece is always asking each other hey, what's getting in the way? What's causing you stress? How can I support you? And what that does is every single week, we're working on solving some of the problems that are slowing us down or frustrating us. So really having that kind of system that we can use to run our business and life makes it so easy to understand where we're going and how we're going to communicate that we're going to get there.
That's probably one of the most, or maybe the most intelligent way of living your life as a couple. And you kind of took the best things from business, running a good business, and brought them into
we did.
Because communication is number one thing. And I also love the fact when you said that before you wrote your manifesto, that you sat down and you took things that you didn't like. I think it's a really, really good point, because a lot of people don't know what they want, but they do know what they don't want.
Yep.
And it's an easier place to bounce off. And I think in relationships as well as businesses, it's the same principle. Have a look at what you don't like and start moving towards what you like and what you want. And I also think that there's, even if you're watching here this episode and you're not in relationships, you're not working with the other half, and you're saying, how does this apply to me? I think it absolutely does apply to you, because we have internal dialogues and we should have a strategy internally to also communicate with ourselves, whether, if it's just a one versus monologue kind of thing. But things like getting clear, things like checking in, important. And I don't think we do that. Things like prioritizing me time, prioritizing your health, prioritizing your family time, whatever it is. I absolutely love your approach, and having a manifesto. And checking that as well. It's fantastic. Talk to me a little bit before I let you go about your book, because I have had a little look and it just looks so interesting, so fitting this conversation.
Yeah. So Tom has many books in his head, but we had the amazing opportunity last year to start writing that book and work with a publisher and an imprint company. Dan Miller is from 48 Days Imprint, 48 Days Press, 48 Days Press. And so that was an experience for us, because one thing that we really wanted was to make sure that we wrote it together, because a lot of the framework that we put together and a lot of the things that we used were things that we had personally done before we built out the framework. So the book is really for entrepreneurs that are looking to build that business in support of the ultimate life that they want.
Yep. So it's called Lifestyle Builders, Build Your Business, Quit Your Job, and Live Your Ideal Life. And what was cool, because clearly we're both very different, so trying to write a book together was challenging. But what we did was we actually, there's 6 main steps to the framework of how to go about figuring out where you're at, where you want to be, and then building the right business that allows you to get there. And so what we did was, when we kicked off each section, Ariane and I both wrote about the same experience in our life of us going through that, but we did it from each of our perspectives. So you see the same situation and you see how, me, the visionary entrepreneur, thinks about it and goes through it. And then you get to see her reaction and how the non-entrepreneur looks at it. So not only do we give you the framework, we actually give you the real life experiences of the ups and downs of what we went through while doing it ourselves.
Which is so important as well, because, through reading, it's that's why we learn from stories, learning about other people's ups and downs not only makes it relatable, but you can actually learn, and you're expecting this as well. That it's not going to be, there's too many entrepreneurs out there that create this reel of highlights and, perfect life. And always when you start talking to people and you show your vulnerable side, they would say, oh my God, you are just like me. How, it's because, this is what happens. And real people like us, like 3 of us, real people succeed in life as well, and it's important to share. Guys, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed this show. I wish it was 2 hours and not 20 minutes, but everybody is so busy in this world of digital distraction that we're trying to respect the time. So we have a link to the book here in the description of this video. Guys, grab it and start building your lifestyle. Even if it is not you're not a couple living together, you will learn a lot from the book, I'm sure. And guys, I thank you again for being my guests. Everyone who is watching, I will see you next week with another episode of Show Up, Stand Out, and I hope that you will stay aligned, get aligned with your lifestyle and your business. See you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.